everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's episode is a special one, as it was a rare in-person podcast that was recorded in Anchorage, Alaska at the Hotel Captain Cook. It's with artist Humberto Ramos of Impulse, Crimson, Amazing Spider-Man, and the Spectacular Spider-Man fame, who is visiting recently for Arctic Comic Con. It's a great chat, though, so let's get into it. Let's start with Alaska. How's Alaska been treating you?
Pretty cool. I really liked, this is a convention that we were willing to come, honestly, mainly because it's a destination. And, my wife, she loves watching all these shows about the Alaskan people,
Yeah.
Those shows in, what's the channel, Health and...
Oh, yeah, there's like a million channels.
H&H, those channels.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, about living in Alaska, and she's thrilled with them. So when the chance came to come here, she's like, yeah, let's go. And actually, it's this Monday is her birthday. So it seems pretty cool to spend her birthday here. And so we arrived a couple of days earlier, and we had a chance to do some, I guess, tourist things here, which are pretty cool, actually. We have the dog slide.
You did the dog sledding?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And we went to the glaciers, the helicopter. I've never flown in a helicopter before. I was scared to death. But it was amazing. So we really, really enjoyed, and we are really happy to be here. Yes.
It is quite the experience. I've lived here my entire life. I'm 40, and I only went to a dog sled place when I was like 29. So your first week here, and you're already beating me after living here for pretty much my whole life. So that's impressive. But, we were talking a little bit before we started recording about how there's different types of conventions for you. There's like the experience ones, and then there's the ones where it's going to be good business for you. And it was interesting kind of like researching for this interview and seeing like some of the conventions you've been to. Like you went to Lake Como Comic Art Festival, which is, I think, like the coolest thing in the world. It's just absolutely insane. I know you went down to Supernova, so you went down to Australia, and so like that's quite the experience. Adding Alaska, it seems like the experience of being a comic artist allows you these really unique experiences where you get to go to conventions and they get to take you to places you probably never would have went otherwise. Is that part of the reason why you do things like this?
Just as you said, yes. I'm from Mexico. Most people know that now, and some they didn't. Well, now they know. I'm a regular kid from not a kid anymore, but I was raised in Mexico City. My family is not like a money family or anything like that. So traveling wasn't a thing for us, and it wasn't in my plans at all. But until I get to comics, and I became known as a artist, and people started inviting me to shows. So that's when I realized that I could reach places that otherwise I wouldn't even dream of, like coming here, for example, and do the things that I did. Not even in 1,000 years I would have imagined doing this. So I'm pleased. I tell people I'm the luckiest fan ever because I get paid for do what I like doing, and they take me places for the things I love doing. So it couldn't get better than that. At least to me, I guess every person, every artist had their own goals and reaches. But for me is enjoy what I do every day, and being able to share it with people.
Have you had any favorite experiences in the conventions, or just like the experiences side, like getting to go to any places or anything like that?
I think every show is a different show.
Yeah.
And talking about different countries, again, the people is different every place, and some are more warmth, some are more thrill and exciting. Some are more fan oriented. They get really anxious and really excited, but to a point that it could be a little scary for them. And because that's the way they live their fandom.
Yeah.
And some places are just cool because of it, And there's a couple places that I wouldn't go back ever.
I'm not going to ask you to name names.
You can tell. Well, yeah, yes. But yeah.
I do think it's interesting because from what I understand, and I mentioned before I listened to that Ink Pulpit interview you did, and you talked about how you're not a fan of comic history, you're a fan of comic art. And you're very passionate about the art of comics, and that's what's always been a big draw to you. And it's interesting too because, like, I imagine going to conventions like Lake Como, for example. Lake Como, for listeners that don't know, is a convention in Italy, Lake Como Comic Art Festival, where basically, like last year, the ratio of artists to attendees was 4 guests or attendees for every 1 artist, which is insane. And it's like very intimate, and there's like the best of the best of the best. And I imagine for somebody who's really passionate about art, being able to tour the world and meet artists from around the world and see them work and do all that stuff like that, you say you're like the luckiest fan in the world. And sometimes you probably get to see people doing things that inspire you in ways you couldn't have imagined.
I do admire artists, and I'm lucky to call many of them my friends now. Mm-hmm. So like Lake Como Festival, it's, as you said, la creme de la creme in this amazing site. You know, the city, it's beautiful. Just the idea of going to Lake Como, the way they plan it, the way that it's done, it's a quite a different experience for us, for people, for the fans as well. But for us artists, there's nothing like that, being honest. But for me, the most important thing is I get quality time with the people that I really admire. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure you guys know Olivier Coipel's work. He's maybe the best artist in the business today, period. And he is my dear friend, and I love him to death. And he's so warm and nice. And you can't get a hold of that at any other shows because he is Olivier Coipel, and everybody wants to be around him. So in a show like Lake Como, that it's really intimate, it's us hanging out together and having fun and talking about life. You know, we don't really talk about art or the business or anything like that. We talk about family and kids and, you know, the things that you talk to your friends with. Yeah. You know, so it's quite a thing. And I remember once at a different show once in San Diego, I was invited to a Marvel party. They used to have these dinners. They bring the talent together, and we had a little reunion and talk, whatever. And I remember being in this table. You know, it's randomly sit. You know, you don't choose your seat. You
right.
Just, there's an open seat, and you sit there. But I was talking to John Romita Jr. on one side and Joe Quesada on the other, and Jeff Loeb. You know, this table with these amazing artists that I really admire.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
And I was like, wow. I mean, to me, it was still today is amazing to know that somebody like Joe Quesada or John Romita Jr., they know my work and they know me, and I can't be happier because I am really lucky for that. Yes, I'm blessed. I'm blessed that way, honestly.
I did want to ask about a common misconception. So I grew up. I was a big fan of Impulse, one of the many, I'm sure. I mean, I actually talked to you before for a piece I wrote about the 25th anniversary of Impulse with Mark Waid and Brian Augustin. And coming up, like, I remember, like, God, it was like Wizard Magazine. People were always, I think they labeled you as like a manga or something like that. You had the influence. And the interesting thing I found out in researching this was you're not actually manga influenced. It was you're influenced by people who are influenced by manga. So your big three growing up were Arthur Adams, Carlos Meglia, and Jason Pearson, I believe, were the big three. What was it about them that really kind of inspired you as an artist and kind of helped you find your own voice as an artist?
I think I like that cartoony style. You know, that American manga label.
Yeah.
It's something Wizard came up with. Because mainly, I should say because of Adam Warren at that time, with Dirty Pair and that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's American manga for me. But then people like Arthur Adams, like Joe Madureira, they were influenced by manga because they really like, anime and stuff. Well, with Arthur is Godzilla and that, Ultraman and those things. And then I was influenced by them. So in an indirect way, I guess I was influenced by manga, but I was really never into it. I mean, I like some,
Right.
but I can't tell names, of shows or mangas or even I know a couple artists, but not many. I like the cartoony style, the freedom. I at that point I remember, there's like the George Perez, the Paul Neary, the this like super heroic style of drawing superheroes, like the John Buscema, the John Romita Sir. And I suddenly found these different voices, and they make it look more fun in my view, more I don't know, dynamic,
energetic for sure. Yeah.
So I thought, well, this is the way I would like to express my skills. Mm-hmm. So I started following them. And, it came out with the thing that I do now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think the beginning of your career is pretty interesting because you started working for Milestone 30 years ago for Milestone. It was Blood Syndicate and was it Hardware?
Hardware, yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that really surprised me was you were doing 2 books at once. And it's kind of hard to even imagine that today. I think like the only people that we really see do that, like Dan Mora does that sometimes. But it's increasingly rare today. And it's kind of fascinating to look back on, like, I can't even imagine trying to do 2 books at once. I mean, I can't imagine you could imagine that. That probably sounds like it would kill you.
What's a different time? I was really young. Mm-hmm. I guess I was willing to show everybody what I was able to do. And that was my one shot.
Yeah.
I really have to make it work. So when Dennis and Dwayne signed me up for Milestone, at the same time I'm still friends with John Bogdanov. He was doing Steel with DC at the time, and they were planning on bringing out the Superman line, and that he was telling me like, okay, there might be a chance in DC, get ready, prepare. Be committed to your books because they know each other. The editors, they know each other, so they talk about artists. They advise and they ask for reference from artists they want to hire. So if you made it good with these guys might be interested as well. Mm-hmm. When the time came, they offered me a couple books for Superboy because I was filling in Tom Grummett. He was doing 0 Hour.
0 Hour, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I was doing these 2 books with Milestone. There wasn't many distractions outside comic books, meaning there was no internet, there was no, there was like 3 channels on TV. So you can really focus on that. Now it's a little harder because you have all these things that you have to be aware of and take care of. I need to show people what I'm doing now. That idea of that you're important to people. Yeah,
you're not just an artist; you're a brand.
Right, exactly. And now everybody is able to reach you. I mean, family problems, because now it's like all a call or a WhatsApp. Back in the days, it's a phone and you can't answer or not. That's it.
Yeah.
So it was easier to focus on work for me, at least.
Well, and you mentioned this. I do think that is. I've talked to a lot of artists, and a lot of artists tell me like one of the best things that can happen to them is when they get to the point where they can say no to jobs. and you were in a position where you probably felt like you had to say yes because, like you said, this is my one shot. This is the time where I can prove it. And, to give Humberto from 30 years ago a lot of credit, it clearly was the right decision for that time, even if it did result in a lot of work with thankfully less distractions. But sometimes it seems like it can be advantageous to like say yes in the moment and then build from there.
I have a problem.
What's that?
I still haven't find a way to say no. Maybe it's because of what I told you right when we start. I feel blessed and lucky. So I feel the way to pay it back is to embrace my job and try to, say yes to everything that comes my way.
Sure.
Happily, most things that come my way are cool things to do. Some they are not, and yes, I've said no to a couple things, but just a couple things.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really picky in that way. I just want to draw. I just want to wake up next morning and have a blank page to draw, and that's pretty much what I need. Then then it comes the payment, the money, the work side of the craft. When I say I would do it for free, I know it sounds poetic and maybe a little reckless.
Sure.
There's a lot of truth in that statement for me. I'm of course I know it's my job and I take it really seriously. But the other side, I really enjoy doing it. Again, as I told you. So some projects that I've done back in my career, some of them I wouldn't say I really enjoy them because maybe the characters weren't those that speak to me in a way. But still, I found something that made them interesting and fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing is there's two sides to it. It's like, one, if you only take the projects that you're going to love, in some ways you're kind of not pushing yourself. But if you I'm not saying that like you've you've entered the matrix and you've found like the right way to do things. But I imagine, like you've had a lot of different projects where like, let's say, you had Revelations, and then that was kind of your own thing, and then but you've had like a million different runs on Spider-Man and X-Men. You've done things like Strange Academy and Champions, which are youth-oriented books where you're kind of doing a new thing with these characters, and so you're doing all these different things. Not saying that you wouldn't have said yes normally, but I imagine by taking on projects that you don't know you're going to love, you probably find new ways to push yourself and new things to love about the work that you do.
Yeah, of course. There's a little going to the unknown with some books.
Yeah,
like Strange Academy. We were hoping for the best because us, the team, we're all friends.
Yeah.
Nick Lowe, of course, CV. CV is not just the boss, but he's a close friend, and Scotty and Edgar. So we were sure that the book was gonna be really fun to do. But then, and the story was good, and the everything was built for that book was really good, was great. But then you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know if people is gonna react the same way, is gonna like it the same way you put yourself into, and then you wonder, And yes, sometimes it's not as expected, like Strange Academy was a great success for everybody. But like, for example, Champions was a different story. I love the Champions, and I would go back to the Champions anytime because I love what we were doing there. But we get there in a weird, let's say, political time.
Mm-hmm.
And things that we were willing to express in that book were taken in a not in the right way, maybe.
Sure.
People took it more. I don't know. They had their own. People who take a book and read it, they have their own mind and they have their own agendas.
Yeah.
Right? And we were just trying to tell people there are heroes everywhere. Mm-hmm. Just see the streets, see the people around you. Those are heroes. They can be heroes. That was the idea of the book. And, some people didn't get it that way. So, I mean, it's not always nice.
Yeah.
But it always teach you new things. And I still think we did a great thing with Champions. And I would go back to that book anytime. Yes.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Looking for the right place to read digital comics? You can find it at Omnibus. Omnibus is a modern digital comic book store and reader app carrying your favorite single issues, volumes, and omnibuses all day and date. It's just like a comic shop where you pay per book, but digital. Omnibus has even upped its game lately, adding an iPhone version of the app with Android coming very soon. That gives you more about what you love about Omnibus, but in your pocket. Looking for an ideal digital comic store, but with an excellent shopping and reading experience? One that uses novel discovery features to help fans find their next new favorite book? And one that features many of the best comics and publishers today, including publishers like Image, Boom, Dark Horse, and more? You can find that all on Omnibus. Visit the web store or download the app today at omnibus.app. And now, back to the show. Well, and you got to work with Mark. And Mark is kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of funny. Like, I've always described some of the creative team connections where it's like a writer and artist is paired up and there's no connection there. It's like an arranged marriage where it's like, hopefully this works out. Maybe it won't. Who knows? But it seems like the one with Mark, actually, it seems like you have a lot of relationships that have been pretty valuable and like not just work relationships, but ones that become friendships. Like you mentioned CB. CB Cebulski is somebody who loves art and has been working with artists for a long time. Nick Lowe, you've probably worked with him a million times on varying Spider-Man things. And like Nick Lowe's a great guy. I love Nick. But then Mark is somebody who he'd been working in comics for a while by the time you came in. He'd been an editor. He'd been like all kinds of things. I imagine that he wasn't just a collaborator. It seems like he kind of ended up being almost like a friend and a mentor in some ways.
Yes. Back in the years, many years ago, I had a chance to go and work in a book that I really want to work. The time wasn't right. So I called Mark and I asked him for advice. And I told him, okay, this guy is calling me to take on a book that I really want to do. I won't say the guy's name, but I will say the book's name. They were offering me The Amazing Spider-Man years ago. Mm-hmm. It was a weird time at Marvel at that time. And I called Mark and I asked him for advice like this. I asked him, what do I do? They're offering me the book that I really want to do. And he said, I explained my concerns about taking over the book at that time, and his answer was, "Don't let your golden dream turn into worst nightmare." If you want to take, he's like, I can't tell you to take it or not. That's your choice. But from what you told me, I can tell you this. So I didn't took the book, and I was banned from Marvel for quite some time.
Really?
Yeah. Then things changed, and Joe Quesada got to be the editor-in-chief. Mm-hmm. And I remember getting a call from Joe Quesada, and he was calling his troops. That was his exact words. I'm calling the troops, and you are my soldier. You want to come with me? I was like, anytime. Yes. So that's how I got back to Marvel.
That's crazy to think about, but also just doing the cataloging the time in my head, this is like bankruptcy era Marvel. And so
pretty much that time, yeah.
Yeah, this is a slightly different animal than most are imagining when they hear the word Marvel. But, I want to go back a little bit because you talked about kind of turning to Mark for advice and everything. And you've talked about how you're learning from everybody. And one of the things I thought was really interesting in that Ink Pulp interview was you talked about how you don't just have goals that are oriented on, I want to get better at storytelling, or I want to get better at action sequences. It's, I want to become more like Stuart Immonen when it comes to storytelling, or I want to become more like Jorge Jimenez when it comes to action sequences. It's like you identify people who are great at things and then you want to learn from them. What is it about studying specific artists and like learning from the work that they do that helps you? But two things. One, learn it better, but also get more excited about the craft. Because it seems like you see other people's work like Stuart or like Jorge, and you're just like, I could learn from these masters. They're great at what they do.
Every other time I text these guys, and I tell them like, dude, I hate you, because that's the way I can show them my respects and admiration.
Yeah.
Because I know how hard it is to do things, and I know how hard it is to get a voice that stands alone or in the middle of this ocean of artists. So when I see those that stand aside everybody else, and I have a way to get close to them in a nice way, because this is always of course in a nice way, and I get to tell them this. It's a challenge for me because I know I'm not the best. Doesn't matter what I try, I would never be the best artist in the business. I know that. I've learned that years ago. So that makes me happy because I don't have that pressure anymore. I just go down and enjoy what I do, and I'm pleased and I'm happy that there's a lot of people who like what I do. And every day I go to my Instagram or Twitter and see or my Kindle app, whatever, and I see these people work, and I get challenged, but also excited, and it gives me a will to do better. Mm-hmm. Because these kids, like Jorge, is just a kid. I mean, there's a lot of people that I follow now. They're just kids. I'm grandpa now, right? It's funny because now it's more often that I go to shows and people calls me legend. So, and it's nice, but it's funny because legend means old. and yeah, I mean, as you said, I've been doing this for 30 years, and but I see all these new kids like Javi Fernandez or Belen Ortega. These kids are they could be my sons and daughters, mm-hmm. and I see them that way. I feel that I am in a situation that I can teach not how to draw, but about life. How's life in being an artist, and I feel pleased doing that now. But also, coming back to what we were talking about, of course, there's all these artists that I admire and follow, and I know they are way better than I am. I need to try to learn what they do. I know that I would never be able to do as they do, but having the right references, I know my work can improve a lot. Because I see a lot of people, so a lot of kids come by the table at shows, and you can tell what the references are when they show you their work, and it's not the right reference. Not because the artists they follow are not good artists, they are, but they are not following the reference these artists follow. Some kids, they like to draw like in a manga way, but what they don't realize is manga artists, they know how to draw, like, how to say,
like a life drawing or like a more classic
exactly.
sort of way.
And they just follow the synthesis of the drawing, the human figure in that. So there's a lot of things that they skip and they don't learn how to do it. So when they show their work, you can tell. Mm-hmm. To me, that's an important thing. I like Jacinto guy. This Jay Jacinto, right? He has this really dynamic style that I love. Because he do this
foreshortening.
He's great at that, mm-hmm. and I have no idea how to do it. And as much as I try, I never get it right. I ended up, erasing things and coming back to my own style. But I really want to, and I know one day I'll get it. But I keep practicing. I mean, my problem is that I'm practicing while I'm actually
also working.
Yes. So I can't let it go just the way it is, and it's like, okay, I didn't get it right this way, but maybe next time, and I'll let it go. No, I have to make it look good for the reader. So I ended up like erasing and drawing it again, but I'm still practicing. People wouldn't ever know, but I'm practicing as I'm drawing. So that's something that I do every page, actually. Every single page that I do, there's a little improvement that I try to push in my work. Most of the time, I don't get it, and I wonder, like, maybe the next page will be better. But I always try to improve. Yes.
It's funny talking about all this because art is inherently subjective, right? There is no one who's the best, although like some might try to make a really good argument for one person or another. I know a lot of people who would, but I don't think there is one the best. And I think that one of the big things is always trying to get better. And that seems like something that you're really focused on. But more than that, I think it's really interesting that you're talking about how you're always learning from people. I know people who have learned from you, like Scotty. Scotty talked about how he has always loved your work. Scotty Young, I've talked to him before. I did an interview with Mike Del Mundo, who I think is one of the best cover artists of like the modern era. I think he's unbelievable. And he said he grew up looking at your stuff. We talked about your work, and like that was a big thing for him. And actually, I do not live on that same level. I wanted to become a comic artist because of you. Unfortunately, I was horrible at it, so I could not become a comic artist. I trained a lot. I almost brought a sketchbook from when I was a kid that was basically just impulse drawings and then also a bunch of very bad drawings of other characters that vaguely looked like they were drawn by Humberto Ramos. And but anyways, I think that's the interesting thing is like, it is funny being called a legend, or being called, like, when I said I was going to be talking to you on my Patreon, I got all these messages like, oh, legend, titan of the industry, all of these things like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting because you've been doing this long, for 30 years, and I really think that you've become like the Arthur Adams for others, or the Carlos Meglia for others, or the Jason Pearson for others. You've become the influencer, like the person who motivates others to become better. And I think that's the beauty about the comic industry and comic art world, is everyone's always learning from one another, and you've been doing this long enough that people want to learn from you.
Yeah, it's quite a thing to realize that. Like I say, Jake Jacinto, like, it's Kim Jacinto. I'm
Kim,
sorry,
yeah,
Kim.
yeah.
Kim, I'm sorry. And I have a story about it. Actually, about what you just said. I started following him on Instagram, and I, like,
it's a great tool for discovery artists, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
All his images, and I like them. I put the hearts and whatever, and I put a comment in one of those images, and he sent me a photo of, on DM of him and me years ago when he was just a kid.
Oh, wow.
And he was having a picture with me. And I answered him, dude, you are way better than I could ever be. I mean, I really love your work. So, and I do. I mean, Kim is something, works stuff that I can't ever draw. Like, I've tried, and I can, but I will. I know I will. That's what makes me challenge myself every day. Like, all these kids are coming with great ideas, great visuals. Storytelling is amazing. It's dynamic. It's fun, and I know I'm from a different era, let's say, but I want to learn. I don't want to stay there, and be left behind, let's say. I'm still willing to be let's say a hype artist. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would I'll have what it takes to be that, but I try every day, and I'm happy to still be in the big books with the big publisher and the big names, and I'm willing to leave it all there because that's what I was built for. But also I know, as you said, I'm 53 years old now. I have been a comic book artist more than half my life. I tell friends and family that I've been in the business more time than I haven't been in the business at this point. I remember being a kid, this early years, trying to break in comics and going to conventions and not being there and willing to be there, and being among the McFarlanes and the Jim Lees and the Eric Larsons. That was the time when I break in, when Image exploded.
Yeah.
And now I see back in time, and I've been in the business more than half my life. I've been here, and I'm really happy, and I want to be this way the rest of my life. And to be at this level, I have to improve myself. I can't let myself think that because I did this, now people should show respects or give me work just because for what I still need to struggle and compete with all these new artists, and I like it, as you said, because I remember this movie, The Man in the Iron Mask, with Leo DiCaprio and Gabriel Byrne. In that there's this scene right to the end where they fight the older Musketeers. They have to fight against the new Musketeers who are protecting the bad king, who's Leo DiCaprio. And we are seeing the legendary Porthos, Athos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan against this battalion of Musketeers, like 20, I don't know. And they say there are many. We're just 4. And I think it's Aramis who says, yeah, but we are legends to them. So they grew up hearing our stories. So I guess that's the one little advantage I have. Most of them, as you said, it's funny when they tell you my first Spider-Man story I read.
Oh, yeah.
What's wrong with you? And I was like, wow, I'm really old.
And now, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Zoop is about to unleash one of their biggest months ever, and it all starts with a follow-up to the mega hit Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees from creator Patrick Horvath, Free for All. Zoop is also launching its very first game campaign this month. They're licensing Tim Seeley's Hack Slash and creating a deck-building card game for its 20th anniversary. There are even more upcoming campaigns from the likes of Jim Starlin, Christian Ward, Eric Palicki, Adriana Mello, Paula Lore, and others. Also, if you ever want to own a piece of Zoop, now you can. They're running an equity crowdfunding campaign where your contribution will earn you shares in the company, as well as other perks. Visit republic.com/Zoop to support and become an investor in Zoop. For creators looking to crowdfund your project or have your books for sale in Zoop's brand new e-commerce marketplace, email them today at hello@wearezoop.com. And now, back to the show. I have to say, one of the things that's interesting about like kind of generational stuff like this, where sometimes the generation that has like, is like your generation, for example, they might look at today's art and all they see is what it isn't. And all they see is like what things used to be. And like that happens a lot in all kinds of things. Like I'm a huge basketball fan, and you listen to older basketball players, people who are retired, and they're just like, they don't play the game the right way anymore and stuff like that. And I've seen artists do the same thing where it's just like, they're not drawing the way, they should be. But in a lot of ways, it's not the way that should be. It's the way that I like, or the way it used to be. Right. And I think it's really cool that instead of looking at Kim's work or Belen Ortega's work or something, or somebody like that, you look at it and you say, what could I learn from it? Not what is wrong with this. And kudos to you. I think it's a healthier mindset to look at, the changing times and say, what can I learn from this rather than like, what's wrong with this?
Oh, of course. My Instagram, the
feed.
people I follow,
Yeah.
it's 95% are artists. 5 of them is family. 5% is family, but everything else that I follow on Instagram is comic book artists. And again, it's amazing what they do because they have the feed from what we did years ago, but now the things that they grew up with aside comic books, and that makes sure they can bring to the craft, and that's something I believe we have to learn from, or at least I have to learn from. I mean, again, every artist pick their way. I really truly believe that I have to keep learning from all the artists that I see. Like years ago, the only voice we could see drawn in the comic books, in the superhero comic books, were from people who were U.S. people from the United States. Now, all these artists are built under the same visual references. But then now we have people from all around the world working in comic books, from Europe to from Asia, Africa, South America, and you can tell the difference. I mean, you can see how their own cultural visual baggage has add to the art they do and the storytelling they create. We're talking about Mike the Mundo.
Yeah.
And man, the things he does is like, I would like to be a surgeon and open his brain,
This sounds like a Mike Del Mundo cover we got going.
Exactly, and see how he come up with stories. I hope people won't get angry about what I'm gonna say, but Mike to me is like Norman Rockwell in comic books, because I love Norman Rockwell. In one single image, he tells a story. I mean, you see the nice painting he painted, and then if you look closer and closer and closer, you start seeing the whole story he's telling you. With the little details, the gestures, the background, and that's exactly what Mike does. Mm-hmm. And I love that, and that's really hard to do, and he make it look so easy and funny that I hate him for that, because I would have to stay like, I don't know, a week trying to come up with a concept that equals what he does, and I would never be able to do so.
My wife and I, we were talking to, I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel Warren Johnson at all, but Daniel Warren Johnson, he does amazing commissions, and we were talking to him about his like commission list, and he will spend sometimes months. Like, people just know that it's going to take a while to get it, because he has to think of, what is this singular image that I want to do? If I've drawn Darth Vader 50 times, what's the singular image that I'm going to do that's going to tell a story that's going to be different than the ones that I've done for other people, so everyone's not just getting the same thing over and over. And that's the thing that I think is amazing about things like, artists like that do, is there is a version of a cover, for example, that is just a singular, beautiful image, and it looks great, but I don't mean to be diminishing, but it's just an image. It isn't a story. And when people like that do something, it tells you so much in that single image. And I think that's amazing. But I did want to ask, you have been doing this a long time. You've talked about how you want to keep learning. It seems to me that for you, it's like, the way you stay passionate about your job and the way you stay excited about the job is by constantly learning. Is that kind of, you're just basically, if you stop moving and you stop trying to learn, that would be when you start to struggle with comic art, because you're not as passionate about it anymore? Like, your passion is your driver?
I remember being a kid and buying comic books. And the one thing that I wanted the most at that time was to being able to copy the drawings that I'm watching in the books in the right way, to draw as this guy. And I think that's what drives me still. I feel like I'm that kid still with different skills now. But when I go to work every day, I work at home, but I don't have to go to work.
Right.
I just move to the next room. And I turn on my computer and that I have always a window open with Instagram, always. And my Kindle app. And I have, like, I don't know, 1,000 books, comic books that I bought from the people that I admire, and I can tell you, it's a list of names that from Joe Math, Art Adams, Chris Bachalo, Joe Quesada, John Romita, Sean Murphy, Kenny Reese, Jorge Jimenez, Javi Fernandez. Gee, I mean, I can go on and on, like Kim Jacinto, of course, because Eric Cañeri.
We gotta say Mateo.
Mateo Escalera, of course.
Don't want him to get mad at
you. No. I do. He's King Spy.
Yeah, King of Spies. Yeah.
I love that book. Olivier Coipel, of course, Stuart, Immonen,
Immonen's an interesting one, though, because it's like, Immonen, like, I talked to him once. I did an interview with him, and, like, he seemed almost regretful that he didn't have, like, a single style, like a single look or something like that. But when you read, like, Russian Olive to Red King, and then you read, like, his Spider-Man work, and you read, like, Grass of Parnassus, his Instagram comic he did, like, you read all three of those books, it's like three different people, all of whom are the best artists you've ever seen.
You do?
I mean, like this. I mean, they're all there, but it's like he can change himself in ways that are just so impressive.
I have to disagree with Stuart, which I admire a lot, but I can always.
Oh no, he didn't say that. I was saying that, like, it's
right.
different.
I mean, like every picture he draws, I can tell is his. Always.
No matter the style.
No matter the style.
What is it? It's just him.
There's people that have come to master his own style that no matter what he does or she does, you can tell with one line. I mean, he had this book he did. I don't remember the name. It's all black and white. It's like heavy, bold figures. I can now open my app and tell you the name of the book. But it's about people in the train and that, and it's not as detailed as what he does, on Ultimate Spider-Man or any other like
Next
comic
Wave.
books. Yeah, but you can tell is Stuart, no doubt. When you have accomplished that, it's quite a thing. I still see my work, and it's like I haven't get there, not even close. I'm still trying.
Last question for you. You're talking about how you can see it in a way that Stuart can't necessarily. And it's like, maybe to some degree, you can't see it in yourself. Like, that's something you can't separate. Do you think there's a point where you're like, I've gotten there? Or do you think you're always going to be trying to get there?
Happiness is a ride, not a destination. That's the way I see it. And you enjoy every stop this train has, through your life, to your goal to get to happiness land, whatever, right? I think I see it the same way. I see happiness in my life that way, and I believe I see my accomplishment as an artist that way as well. My goal is to reach mastering my own style, let's say. Mm-hmm. If I'll reach that goal, I don't know. Maybe I don't even care. But going that path and running that road and enjoying the trip, it had made my career, and I'm so happy trying to get to that point every day. Maybe it's like the horizon. I just see the horizon there, and I'm trying to get, knowing that I'll never reach the horizon, but I consciously enjoy the ride. So maybe the answer for that is I'll try. And in that project, I'm gonna learn stuff, new stuff, and which enrich my work, and hopefully it'll look better, right, from what I can do now, and I'll be happy doing that. And then if I get to that point one day, I think I'm gonna be really bored the next day.
Well, I hope you don't get bored too soon, but Humberto, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about your career, comic art, and everything else. I really appreciate you taking the time.
I've been really happy. Thank you for having me, and it's been really great. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with artist Humberto Ramos. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram and his work in the spectacular Spider-Man at Marvel. Big thanks to Deanna Chapman for stepping in to edit this week's episode. If it sounds better than usual, it's because of her. Love Off Panel, want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by following on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including John Auerbach, Dustin Weaver, Ninja Assassin Love Story webcomic, Brandon Heyman, John Neesmith, Aiden Hammond, Kenny Myers, JKJ Art, Faith Aaron Hicks, Yeah Comics, Ben Rowe, Cameron Brown, Jonathan Breen, Danny Ollies, Charlie Stickney, Tom Drennan, Jeremy Thomas Burke, Jared Schwab, Scott Dunn, Chip Mosher, Seth Pomeroy, James McEwen, Andrew Lehman, Christina Merkler, Scott Place, Travis Gibb, Darcy Van Polgees, Travis Schmeiser, Tom Evans, Reed Beeman, Kelly Sudaconic, Max Wood, Jeremy Lambert, Brian Holt, Nira Levy, Jason Hussa, Kieran Gillen, Jonathan Kent Uratam, Henry Johnson, Django Boren, James Tynan IV, Chris Langford, Jason Wood, Tom Beachy, Ben Domstead, Ron V, Nick Walker, Patrick Hoyle, Isaac Oren, Capes and Tights Podcast, Klaus Vandeven, Submed Industries, Jack Mulqueen, Carl Kerschel, Robert Masella, Elza Chartier, Luke Nakashoji, Dr. Luke, Scott Hazelwood, Canadian by Proxy, Bradley Rader, Carl Choi, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Bauer, Declan Shalvey, Dan Carino, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, Liana Kangas, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Susanna Pullo, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, Andrew Carita, Stephen Holt, Philip Myrick, Chris Pachal, Torrin Grunbeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Reinwan, Vita Ayala, Achilles, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Nick Polito, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogart, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendrick, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Colin McMahon, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Mark Abnett, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art in San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to Wolfpack for letting me use their song Outro as the show's opening theme, and to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Odd Panel's outro and ad music just for the show. Check out both their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.